All right, what is up, Panthers fans? Our favorite pathological liar, Matt Rhule, is out making his media rounds as he has announced that he's accepted the Nebraska coaching job. Uh, Former head coach of the Carolina Panthers has been going basically to anyone who will listen to complain about the Carolina Panthers and push the blame off on other people. So we have several clips here we can look at. And this isn't even every example. This is just some of the more prominent ones that we've seen in the forefront. So here he is in Good Morning Football. And I'll fast forward it a little bit.
Right now, I mean, she is.
How's it going?
So in this one, he's going to say he's gone back and looked at the film to help figure out what he did wrong with the Carolina Panthers to figure out what he can do better moving forward. The problem with that is the host of the show looks at him and says, "And what are some of those things, Matt Rhule? Rat Mule, Matricia Rule." She says, "What are some of those things you didn't do right?" He said, "It's a good question. I just think like relationships. Here's the thing. Aren't relationships supposed to be the whole thing, the whole stick, the whole spiel when you're a guy who's a program builder, not an offensive coach, not a defensive coach. You're a guy who's all about building a culture. Don't relationships matter quite a bit when you're a culture builder?" So what is he talking about? He should have focused more on relationships. Check it out.
Pretty legit.
Is she?
How old? She's 7.
Nice.
She's 7, and so she loves the time with Daddy. And you know what? I spend a little time every day doing some football, going back, watching tape, watching games, and trying to do what all the great coaches that I know have done is after you get fired, going back and saying, hey, what could I do better? Getting ready for the next chance.
And what are some of those things?
That's a great question. No, I think when I look.
You see that? That's a man right there who's caught in a lie.
Back at my time in Carolina, I look back on it fondly. I'll say that first.
Yeah.
And by the way, the reason this is so obvious is because relationships is not something you see on film. He just said he was watching film. She said, "What did you see on film?" You didn't see your relationships on film. You're just making stuff up.
I think I'll always take away from it that no matter what level you coach, I've coached at FCS, I've coached at Division III, I've coached at Group of 5, Power 5, and in the NFL. It always comes down to relationships. And if I could go back, I wish I would have done a better job in year 1 and year 2 of having really strong relationships with the players. And I can blame COVID and masks and all those things, but
this is another thing. He's done this in every one of these interviews that I've watched. Talked about COVID, blame masks, blame social distancing. Like, dude, the entire world was dealing with that. You can't use that excuse here in 2022 when you've been failing since then. It's not 2020 anymore. You can't use that excuse. That part of history is over. It's not affecting how you're coaching in 2022. And he's brought it up in every interview. The team's gotten worse since 2020. The mask and COVID had nothing to do with the fact that you were terrible at building a program. So stop bringing it up.
But last year, at the end of last year, I got together with Shaq Thompson. I got together with Christian McCaffrey. And you know what? I went back to just being, Coach Matt. The guy that was coaching at Temple, the guy that was running around in a T-shirt and shorts and having fun with it. And it didn't end the way I wanted it to. But I'm proud I never lost the locker room. I'm proud that those guys fought and stood up for me to the very end. And so I hope I get another chance to coach. I hope that I'll try to do some things better football-wise.
All right, so that was last week on Good Morning Football. I believe that was actually even before the Nebraska news was announced. So this one's a little more recent. I believe this was Monday or Tuesday night. This is with Pete Schrager, who's also on Good Morning Football, runs his own podcast. And this is a conversation, him talking to Matt Rhule. And I think the question is something along the lines of, what would you do different? And Matt Rhule has an almost jaw-dropping response. Let's take a listen to this one.
One thing you learned from your 2.5 years in the NFL as a head coach, and in the same vein, if you could do it all over again, what would be the one thing you would change looking back on it, as obviously it didn't work out with Super Bowl victories or anything like that?
I think I probably would just probably taking another job. I mean, I mean, it's a great place. The wonderful people, but I just don't know if I was a fit there.
I love that. He would have taken another job, guys. Let's go back and think about what was going on at the time. Whenever he was scheduled to leave the interview with the Panthers, he was supposed to get on a plane and go to New York to interview for the Giants job. So let's say he takes that other job with the Giants. He ends up as a head coach in New York City. How fast do you think the people in the media of New York would have ran Matt Rhule out of town? That clown would not have made it past the first season in that city. There's not an easier place you can be a head coach in the National Football League than Charlotte and maybe a couple other places. The people here are used to seeing losing. They just want to see progress. They want to see decent. They want to see competitive. It's not like you go to New York, who's won Super Bowls, or you go to Pittsburgh, where there's 6 Super Bowl trophies in the building. You just have to be okay to survive. Look at John Fox. Yes, took team to Super Bowl. Good head coach. But at the end of the day, he had what? 2 playoff appearances in 9 years, 10 years, however long it was. You don't have to be a great head coach to survive in Charlotte. And this man wants to try his luck in New York. That's what he's saying right now. He should have taken the Giants job.
At the end of the day, we talked about, hey, we're going to have a 4-year plan, a 5-year plan. If you tell me, hey, we got a 2-year plan, then I'm going to go sign a bunch of free agents and do it. So, what was a 4-year plan became a 2-year and 5-game plan real quick. And
interesting.
All right, so let's talk about this. What was a 4-year plan? All right, first of all, we were into the 3rd year of his 4-year plan. Things were only getting worse over time. And he was preaching a 7-year plan when he was in the building. So I don't know why he's talking about a 4-year plan now. But also he points to the fact that they could have made more trades and signed more free agents. My guy, you made plenty of trades and you signed plenty of free agents when you were in town. The Panthers were not shy from making trades. They made trades they probably shouldn't have made. They traded 3 draft picks for Sam Darnold. You were involved in trades. You traded for Stephon Gilmore, a 30-year-old Pro Bowl cornerback. That's not a win now move. By the way, when you were 3-0, you traded for a 30-year-old Pro Bowl cornerback that you did not re-sign at the end of the season. If that's not a win now move, I don't know what is. So for him to go away now after being fired and to look back and say, we weren't trying to win, we were trying to build. You were trying to win, you just couldn't do it. And the building for the future thing was not going well.
It's not about, hey, it's not, and I'm not angry about it.
No.
At the end of the day, I understand, but if it's going to be that quick, then we're going to sign some more free agents. We're going to go make the blockbuster trade. We're going to do those things. I think the trajectory that we were on was correct. It was to have a team that next year could maybe make a big trade that could, and I think you see the signs of it right now. When they play well on offense, they win. There's a good defense there, and I give Steve all the credit. I give the coaches all the credit, but I'm part of that building process. Yeah. So had that just stayed for maybe through this year and maybe made the big free agent signing this year to get them over the top, I think that the Panthers could win the NFC South.
See, I absolutely love this. He says he's giving Steve Wilkes all the credit in the world, but he's not. He's trying to take that credit and keep it for himself because he's talking about what the Panthers are doing now is because of what I helped build, what I was building there. The Panthers are clearly a better team right now without Matt Rhule in the building. 100%. Ever since he left, as soon as he left, the team got immediately better. There's no discussion to be had here about how Matt Rhule helped build this team into what it is. And I mean, I guess that's true, but that's not the point here. The point is that he's trying to take the credit Steve Wilks deserves for winning with a team he couldn't win with and make it about him. This team was in a terrible spot when Matt Rhule left. Steve Wilks stepped up, picked up the pieces, and has turned this season into something we can at least be moderately proud of, and who knows what will happen going forward with 5 more games left. This dude makes everything about him. Everything's about him. Which brings us to our next. We'll just call it a lie because this is just straight up not true. This is on the Rich Eisen show. Rich Eisen, I believe, is going to ask him something along the lines of, why didn't you take a quarterback with all those early picks you had? And then Matt Rhule initially says, well, we didn't like any of those guys. And then he realizes that that's just completely not true. And that there are some good players that came out of those drafts, or that one draft specifically, 2021 draft, Justin Fields and Mac Jones. They took J.C. Horn with that pick, which is fine. J.C. Horn's a great player. I have no problem with you taking a good player that you had rated higher than another player. But I specifically remember after that draft, Matt Rhule sitting in an interview and saying, I'd rather have J.C. Horn and Sam Darnold than Justin Fields, which is fine. That's a fine answer. But don't try to lie about it 2 years later.
No, because there was really no one that, I shouldn't say that. Justin Fields is playing really well, and Mac Jones is someone that I have a lot of respect for. But, sometimes articles come out after you get fired and say, oh, hey, why didn't you guys get Justin Herbert? Well, because he got drafted in front of us. And, I wasn't the GM. I didn't make the picks. I had a lot of input.
Boom. I wasn't the GM. I didn't make the picks. Now, let's go back here, if I can pull it up. There was an article that came out on Panthers.com. I have to scroll down a little bit here. That came out after the Panthers signed Scott Fitter as their GM. Here it is. And the article was about how we hired a new GM, but look at the first sentence of the second paragraph. Rhule confirmed Friday that technically he has final say over the team's roster. When he was hired, they made a huge deal about the fact that he was going to have full control. That was, I'm guessing, the biggest stipulation to him coming here was he wanted total control. And we saw that over his tenure here, and especially when it got ugly at the end. There are all these crazy rumors from staff about, how much of a control freak he was and controlling social media. And by the way, the social media team for the Panthers immediately went back to making great content once he walked out the door. So I can't confirm that that's true, but I can confirm that what they're doing now is a lot better than what they were doing when Matt Rhule was in the building. But it's right here. He's trying to rewrite history and say he didn't have control over the roster. We all know you had control over the roster. They made that perfectly clear when you were hired. They made that perfectly clear when the new general manager was hired. And they put out so many of these draft videos over the last 2 drafts of him calling the players and him, talking to Fitterer and talking to Tepper and talking to all the scouts when the picks were made. And it sounded like if he wasn't making the picks, he had a large say in them. And I don't just mean first round picks. I think those are more of a team decision. I think as you go down the line, they become more Matt Rhule picks. And honestly, I'm not even saying anything bad about that. I'm not knocking that at all because he actually did a pretty good job drafting over the last couple of years. These are some of the better drafts we've had over the last 8 or 10 years. So I give him credit for that. But at the same time, why are you lying? That's what I don't understand. He could sit there, and I believe, actually, if I didn't back out of that clip, I believe in that clip he goes on to say, we drafted guys like Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, Ike Mukwanu. We think these guys are going to be future Pro Bowl players. I agree with you. I agree with that, Matt Rhule. Those are great players. You nailed those picks. Why are you lying anyway? Why don't you just say, we did a good job with the picks we made? We picked the right guys. You gain nothing by sitting here and saying, I didn't make the picks? Just answer the question. You have in front of you, if you tell the truth, you have a good answer to the question. We drafted future Pro Bowl players with those picks. So we're not going to complain. We can't really say now that we should have drafted a quarterback when we did a good job. We made the right picks, right? That's all you have to say. Why are you trying to throw people under the bus for no reason? Why is he throwing the general manager under the bus for no reason? There's no shame in drafting J.C. Horn, Ikem Ekwonu, Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin. Those were all great picks, Matt Rhule. That we know you had a huge say, if not all the say in. So why are you trying to blame somebody else just because you guys didn't draft a quarterback? Is it because you spent 3 draft picks on a terrible quarterback? Is that why, Matt Rhule? I don't know. This stuff's been stirring up all over, Panther circles on the internet, on Facebook and Twitter for a couple days now. So I decided I'd finally sit down and try to compile some of this information and share some thoughts. This dude is something else, man. He is something else. I don't have it pulled up, but I saw another one today as well. Where he started bringing the fans into it, man, saying he couldn't win over the fans. It's like, yeah, you're damn right. You couldn't win over the fans. Fans don't like coaches who lie and make excuses all the time and show no accountability. That's the issue here, Matt Rhule. And that's the interesting thing about him being a college head coach. So much of being a college head coach is teaching young men how to be responsible and hold themselves accountable. And I'm not saying he can't do that, because obviously he's a very good talker. He's very good at lying. He'll probably do that without skipping a beat, because he's a really, really good liar. But at the same time, if anyone takes the time to go back and see if he practices what he preaches, they'll find that that's not really the case. He's going to go into a young man's living room, look at his mom and dad in the eyes and say, I'm going to teach your son how to be accountable. Accountable for the decisions he makes. Accountable for the job that he is responsible for. And I hope those people take the time to go back and see what Matt Rhule did over his tenure with the Carolina Panthers, because that man is a pathological liar. Thanks for watching. Keep pounding, like and subscribe. Peace out.